Some moments in life don't just happen, they arrive. They interrupt you like a forgotten melody you suddenly remember, when time slows, breath catches, and everything familiar seems to pause. It feels like the universe has stopped just long enough for you to notice that something sacred is unfolding. If you've ever met someone and felt like you were being introduced to something ancient, not new, you're not alone. That feeling, that deep, inexplicable knowing, isn't just romantic fantasy, it's spiritual memory. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt this kind of connection before? That soul-deep recognition that defies logic? I'd love to hear your story. Carl Jung believed that the meeting of two souls is never accidental. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And in that transformation, something divine is at work. It's as if the universe, maybe even God, conspires behind the scenes to bring two people together, not just to love, but to awaken. But this awakening rarely arrives the way we expect. We're conditioned to chase comfort, ease, predictability, but the soul craves something else entirely. The soul longs not for a warm body, but for recognition, for expansion, for truth. When the divine decides it's time, it doesn't hand you a soulmate wrapped in a bow. It shakes you. It places a mirror in front of you in the form of another person, not to flatter your ego, but to undress it. That mirror won't just reflect your beauty, it will show you your shadows, your fears, your unfinished stories. And that's the first sign this isn't just another connection. When God intends for two people to meet, He doesn't simply orchestrate circumstances. He awakens echoes, ancient echoes within them. You'll feel it as a pull before you see it clearly. Like a whisper you can't translate but feel in your bones. A longing that's hard to describe. Not desperation, but quiet urgency. A sense that someone, somewhere, is meant to find you. Here's where most people get confused. They think soulmate love will feel effortless, like a soft landing. But often it starts with resistance. When the real thing comes, your ego might panic. You might feel triggered, unsteady, even scared. Because deep down, some part of you knows this person is going to change everything. That's not a romantic idea. It's spiritual truth. Soulmate connections often begin in chaos because something within you must die to make space for what is being born. Jung warned us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. If you've experienced it, you know that moment when love no longer feels safe but sacred. When you realize this isn't just someone to love, this is someone who sees you. Being seen is terrifying, especially when you've spent your whole life trying to be acceptable, polished, put together. But a true soulmate doesn't care about your presentation. They sense your essence. They speak to the parts of you you've hidden, even from yourself. You'll feel naked in front of them and somehow free. This isn't infatuation. It's not lust. It's not a compatibility checklist. It's recognition. And recognition feels more like remembering than discovering. You look into their eyes and it doesn't feel like, who are you? It feels like, oh, it's you. It's the collapse of time, the dissolve of logic. You might feel like your body arrived last, but your soul was already waiting. Many people run from this. When something this powerful arrives, the instinct isn't always to surrender. Sometimes it's to retreat, because we're not used to being loved at a soul level. We're used to being chosen for our roles, our appearance, our usefulness. But when someone chooses your soul without asking it to perform, you panic, because it demands authenticity. There's no hiding anymore, no pretending, no performing. For some of us, that's the most terrifying intimacy there is. But it's also the most healing. In that kind of relationship, your wounds don't get ignored. They get witnessed. Not to be fixed, but to be understood. That's the difference between a karmic partner and a divine soulmate. A karmikos kapsolat is metli amintat. A divine relationship reveals the lesson, and that revelation frees you. You stop running from yourself. You stop bargaining for love. You stop shrinking just to be chosen, because suddenly you realize, I was never too much. I was just too much for the wrong mirror. Jung believed the soul carries within it an image of the other, the anima in a man, the animus in a woman. This internal blueprint magnetizes us towards someone who mirrors that archetype. But here's where it gets tricky. If we're not spiritually mature, we can fall for the image, not the person. Projection feels like love, but it's just longing wearing a mask. That's why God will often allow the illusion to shatter, because he wants you to love what is real. Real love doesn't idolize you, it awakens you. And that awakening isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's messy, uncomfortable, even painful, but it's never destructive. It burns away illusion so that only truth remains. I believe that's why soulmate love arrives when we least expect it. When we're no longer grasping, controlling, or begging the universe for a partner. It arrives when we've begun to enjoy our solitude, when our loneliness has taught us how to listen to ourselves, when we've stopped performing for attention and started healing for alignment. This is divine timing, not romantic urgency. When that moment comes, it doesn't knock loudly. It enters quietly. You may meet them in a grocery store, in a random conversation, maybe even online. The ordinary context doesn't matter because the energy is undeniable. It hums in your bones. You feel peaceful and charged, still and electrified, familiar and completely new. That's when you know something sacred is unfolding. What makes this connection so profound isn't just the love itself. It's recognizing who you become in its presence. You're not reaching for validation in the same way. You're not clinging or chasing or molding yourself to be accepted. Instead, you find yourself expanding, opening, becoming more you than you've ever allowed yourself to be. Not because the other person completes you, but because they reflect you clearly, honestly, unflinchingly. It's no longer about whether this person fits your expectations or checks your boxes. That all fades into irrelevance. What matters now is how they activate you, not in a triggered, defensive way, but in a deeply awakening one. Their presence calls parts of you forward that you didn't even know were asleep. Dreams you tucked away, truths you've silenced, courage you've buried under years of people-pleasing and survival. You watch yourself unfold, not because you have to, but because you want to, and they're doing the same. Because divine connections aren't one-sided. They evolve in harmony. They challenge both people to rise, to be seen, to strip away the armor. There's no savior, no pedestal, just two souls learning to meet each other as they are and still choosing to stay. This isn't to say it's easy. You'll still encounter conflict, still feel vulnerable, still get scared. But the difference is, this time you stay, you talk, you face it together. You don't shut down at the first sign of friction because deep down you know the friction isn't a threat, it's a signal, a flare that something within needs attention, love, healing. When you meet someone who sees that, really sees it and doesn't walk away, it rewrites something ancient inside you. Many of us grew up with the idea that love is conditional, that love must be earned, that love will leave when we're too much or not enough. But real love, the kind Jung hinted at, the kind rooted in divine design, doesn't abandon you when you're messy. It leans in, it listens harder, it holds your trembling hands and says, "I'm still here." Sometimes this love arrives after the heartbreaks, after the betrayals, after the seasons where you begged for something that never came. You needed those chapters, even if they tore you apart because they softened you, refined you. They helped you understand what not to accept so that when this true resonance arrived, you'd recognize it, and you'd be ready. If it had come earlier, you might not have been able to hold it. You might have sabotaged it, projected old wounds onto it, or tried to squeeze it into an old, outdated version of yourself. But now you've shed enough of your old skin to see clearly, to feel without flinching, to receive without guilt. And let me tell you, to receive love without flinching is revolutionary. Many of us are used to being hyper-independent, giving and fixing and showing up for others while ignoring our own needs. We're trained to believe that vulnerability equals weakness, that needing someone makes us less. But with a soulmate connection, needing isn't a deficiency, it's a bridge, a sacred exchange. You meet in your wholeness, not your lack. You support, not save. You inspire, not fix. When you love from that place, the relationship becomes a force of growth, not a refuge from pain, but a canvas for truth, a space where both people are safe enough to unravel, to rebuild, to evolve. The most divine partnerships aren't about creating a perfect love story. They're about co-creating a container where both souls feel free to become their most truthful selves. When God brings two soulmates together, it's not just for romance, it's for purpose. Together, You might build a family or a movement or a quiet, intentional life that radiates light simply by existing. You might trigger each other into deep healing or call each other into creative brilliance. You might challenge the world's definition of success and build something entirely your own. Whatever it looks like, it won't be ordinary, because you aren't ordinary, and neither is the connection. This is sacred geometry in motion, divine orchestration disguised as chance. Remembering isn't always immediate. Sometimes the recognition comes in waves. At first, it's a feeling, a subtle familiarity in their voice, their laugh, their silence. Then it builds. The way they listen, the way they notice the things you never had to say. The way they look at you like you're already whole, not because of what you offer, but because of who you are when no one's watching. You find yourself saying things like, "I don't know why, but I trust you." Or, "This feels like something I've waited lifetimes for." Some people will dismiss it, call it irrational, but if you've ever felt it, you know how real it is. More real than anything that came before it. Because it doesn't come from the mind, it comes from the body, from the soul, from that quiet sacred place inside that's never been fooled. Soulmates don't always come to stay. Sometimes they come to wake you up. Sometimes they arrive to open a door you've been terrified to approach alone, to hold a mirror to your heart and say, "This is what's possible. This is who you could be if you stop hiding." I know that's not what people want to hear. We want soulmates to stay forever, to marry us, to grow old with us. But the soul doesn't work by fairy tale timelines. It works by lessons, by divine unfolding. Sometimes the most sacred thing a soulmate can do is leave. Not out of betrayal, but completion. Because their role was never to fill you. It was to ignite you, to pull you into alignment with who you were born to be. You might mourn them like a death, and yet you'll feel more alive than ever because they left you with something eternal. A knowing, a flame, a memory that doesn't burn you, but guides you. If you're lucky, if you're truly blessed, your soulmate will stay. Not because they have to, but because they choose to, again and again. They choose you. Not the version of you that fits a mold, but the one that keeps breaking and rebuilding. They hold space for your darkness without shrinking your light. They call you out with love and call you back with grace. In a divine partnership, love is not a contract. It's a practice, a ritual, a choosing every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's what makes it sacred. When you find this kind of connection, it doesn't make life easier. It makes it realer. You no longer have the luxury of pretending. You're seen too deeply for that, and strangely, that becomes your freedom. Now, you can stop performing. Now you can stop competing. Now you can stop earning love. You can just be. And in that being, something extraordinary unfolds. You begin to heal in places you didn't know were broken. You begin to trust in ways you didn't know were possible. You begin to love not from fear or fantasy, but from deep, grounded knowing. Whether your soulmate is already beside you, still on their way, or watching you from across the veil of time, remember this. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You are not unworthy of deep, soulful connection. You are just waiting for the right mirror. And when it comes, you'll know. Not because it's perfect, but because it's true. The soul knows. It doesn't measure love by flowers, texts, or promises. It measures love by presence, by attention, by the sacred commitment to growth, even when it's uncomfortable. When you've tasted truth, you won't settle for less, not out of arrogance, but reverence. Reverence for what it feels like to be met, to be mirrored without distortion, to be chosen without masks. And when that truth finally arrives, it doesn't demand explanation. It just lives quietly, unapologetically in your chest. It hums beneath your conversations, your shared glances, your silences. Because the most divine connections speak the softest. They whisper instead of shout. They show instead of prove. They stay instead of beg. That's when you understand what people mean when they say, the soul knows.